partly one of the angles is about internal. So for many of you that may be working in an internal part of your organization, it could be HR, IT, finance, marketing, whatever it is, where you're trying to influence internal key stakeholders or other teams, indeed that may be the case, then how we get our point across, how we get heard, and how we get seen in the way that we want to be seen and listened to is, of course, really, really important. It might be that you have an external impact with a number of key stakeholders that might be selling something, that might be engaging with key stakeholders, that might be the ability to persuade people to think in a way which is similar in accord with the way that you think in order to get a particular message across. And again, we think this is going to be really valuable for you if that sort of is an important element of what you do, and of course the importance of your job and your career. So as we talk about this stuff today, we want to try and think about it for all different angles. We've got many people on the line who have got very different needs and wants probably from today's session. We're thankful that so many people have shown up and have registered as well, so thank you very much for that. And we're absolutely delighted that we've got a man on the line live right now in front of a real bookcase called Peter Penny. Peter and I have known each other for a number of years. We bumped into each other, I guess it was back in 2007, probably 2007, 2008.
Yes, I was quite young then.
And I was really blown away by the work that Peter and his team, Connected Pictures at the time, and they're still involved in doing some brilliant work actually, but really impressed by the work that Peter was doing and producing and working with lots of different organizations. So I'm going to give Peter sort of a chance to introduce himself a bit more in detail, so I don't want to do him any injustice, but really blown away by the work that he's done, really inspired by the journey that he's also had, and I'm sure we're going to unpick some of that as we go through the next 45 minutes or so, and absolutely delighted that he's agreed to be with us to share some of his experiences. So this is being recorded. We're going to repost this out on different social channels and maybe cut up the content a little bit. So please don't worry about it being recorded. We're not recording what you say, we're just recording what Peter and I say. So without further ado, before we get into this, Peter, maybe you could give us a sort of quick 30 seconds or so about the Peter Penny story.
Oh my God, yes. 30 seconds. Actually, yeah, there's the background really is like a Netflix series. There's various ones that have got along. Series 1, which is the early stuff, is quite straightforward. I've written this stuff down, so forgive me half reading. But I was just an ordinary suburban kid, and I went through to the point where I was in tertiary, and I went to art college. But I got thrown out because I was sneaking off during the day to a studio just down the road from the art college, where I was earning money for doing real artwork in the studio environment. That actually took me to Series 2, which I sort of took a gap year, ended up in Rome, don't ask why, but it was amazing. I was washing dishes and working in a smelly dark room, and then became assistant to one of the photographers. And like Gollum found the ring in Lord of the Rings, I found a camera, and I was just as Gollum is about gold, I was about the camera, and I fell in love with it. Back in the UK, I eventually got in with an amazing team, and we were doing stuff for Mary Quant, fashion designer. You can imagine what a whirlwind that was, and amazing, and helped me a great deal. And then if we come into Netflix Series 3, I had worked by then into management, working for people like Saatchi & Saatchi, which was a great education. Sadly, Series 4 came up and smacked me in the face. And that was the loss of my darling wife of many years. And she died of the dreaded cancer. And that was a bit of a swerve in my life, to sort my head out and do something for the cancer charity. Again, a story another time, but basically I ended up climbing a mountain a month across the globe and managed it. And we raised a lot of money, but it gave me time to think. And I turned my life into what I'm about to tell you. I handed the company over to my son and a couple of business partners. They are doing amazingly well. Look them up. The Beautiful Truth is something that you should all look, see, and read and start to understand. We all need to learn from it. So now, having spent 3 years at Oxford, I was studying psychology in the workplace and helping out with the team who were setting up a group to help domestic violence victims, and gone on to now be a lecturer in the psychology factors. I worked with an amazing woman, Teresa Havas. We have an advisory called The Advisory, and we talk, we lecture at a couple of universities, and that's it. That's me, and I'm here today.
Well, I mean, there's so much I guess we could fit in terms of, I want to ask you questions about some of that, but I'm not going to, because we've got enough to get on with, I think, for the session. But again, I think, Peter's journey, one of the consistent things that I've certainly observed from knowing Peter is just the variance of experience. And I think that's one of the things we wanted to bring in for today, was looking at all the multifaceted angles that Peter's looked at this. So this idea of how to pitch, how to get messages across in the right way, from the sort of complex film work that Peter's done with communicating complex messages into different corporate audiences, which is no easy feat, through to the work that he's now doing and various sort of social movements he's involved with supporting. So I think all of these elements require the ability to translate and communicate messages in the right way. And this is how we wanted to look at this. Dare it, I'm going to use the word holistically. Right, so this is really important for today's
Yes.
and conversation. So we've got a bunch of questions, because I think it's the best way to try and structure and get some of these messages across. Otherwise, Peter and I could probably talk forever. So we've got top 10 questions. Peter and I spoke before, and I think there's an important structure and element to this, because we're trying to get across as many of the key concepts and ways to do this as possible. And then we're going to have an opportunity at the end, a bit more unstructured, maybe with some Q&As. If you've got any questions or thoughts, please just include it down in the chat. And we've got the brilliant Rose Leach live on the line also. I should have introduced Rose at the beginning. So Rose is from the Global Growth Institute and the World Class Manager team. So for those of you who know us, you'll probably know Rose. And we'll be working together with you for the next sort of few minutes on the session. So without further ado, again, let's get into a little bit of the detail. I understand, Peter, from some of the discussions we've had, I think you've got quite a definite view in terms of maybe what the perfect pitch looks like. So maybe before we get into some of the questions I've got, could you give us a bit of an outline of, in an ideal world, what do you think is the perfect pitch?
Yes, it just occurred to me when we were talking that we put together a lot of thoughts and ideas, and I like doing it that because it's somebody used the word today this morning, and I had to grab it because it fits. The word is empirical, and I did actually go and look it up to make sure, and it's exactly what we're talking about here. It's what we are telling you, talking to you, is by our own experience. It's not theory. What Wayne has been through, what I have been through, is something that we want to pass on to help. And I thought to just twist this slightly the other way around is what I would like to get across is what I consider are the component parts of the perfect pitch. The first is taken from the title of a book, but it is collaborative intelligence. So what do I mean by that? It's working and thinking with people who think differently. And it's incumbent upon us as the pitchers to understand them, the audience, and see that we can get close to talking each other's language. Thereby be collaborative, thereby actually get forward and get a message communicated, whether that is marketing message, whether that's an internal message through HR or whatever, to school groups, to fashion houses, no matter. Those are the component parts. Obviously, think about it get yourself prepared. It's a science and an art, and we do need to think about what we're doing. So prepared to be the best you can be, especially in the briefing. Do your homework within that briefing. Supercharge your elevator pitch. Be ready that should they suddenly ask, oh, so tell me about yourself, or tell me about the company, you are prepared to, yeah, that's cool. I've got that. I can present, and I can get my information across to you. Select and prepare the best team that are going to pitch to get this across. They may be, and we've got two things here, because there is taking the brief and there is presenting the pitch. So this happens with both ways. Who are your best people? Doesn't necessarily mean it's the boss. It's the person that can, one, chairing a meeting, much as Wayne is doing. Chairing a meeting is giving each person a chance to present. It's watching the room in a board meeting or a company meeting or a client meeting. It's watching those that are, yes, smiling, reacting, body language, positive, but there are those that may be sitting back. So we need to be able to bring those forward. So you need a chair, a scribe, somebody to write this sort of stuff down, and the best person to pitch the concept. Be positive, not arrogant. And I'll leave you with the final point here, which is a present from Don Miguel Ruiz. And I ask all of you to possibly read this. But there are the 4 agreements, and they are these. 1, be impeccable with your word. 2, don't take anything personally. 3, don't make assumptions in the meeting, especially. And 4, I repeat, always do your best. Work your hardest to do your best on behalf of you, on behalf of your team, but more importantly, on behalf of the client or the group of people you're talking to.
So I think that's a great way to try and capture this. And what we're going to do now, I think with some of the questions we've got, Peter, is unpick this a little bit more. And the first question is around, I guess, defining the problem. There was this great guy in the US military called Colonel Ed McGuthrie, who we were brought up with when I was at Deloitte many years ago and watching his videos. And one of the things he talked about was these 4 questions that make up what they call an after-action review in the US military. And the 4 questions were, what was supposed to happen? What actually happened? Was there a difference in between the first 2, good or bad? And what can we do differently next time? And they said that the most hardest question to agree on was the first question, was what was supposed to happen? What's the problem? Not your opinion, not my opinion, what is actually the problem? And this is often where we found that things go wrong in the pitch process, that the brief of the client is perhaps never really well clarified by people. So I think that's the first question, I think, Peter, is really how to understand the problem and just making sure that the problem that you think you understand is actually the problem and is the brief.
Yes, there's several angles on that, but I'll keep it short. I would say it's the homework. It's the homework that you do, but it's also the homework you set. Putting it coldly is sitting with the everybody involved in the presentation, both pitchers and client listeners, is almost as blunt as, okay, can we set the agenda and the outcome, the preferred outcome for this meeting? Find your words, and then everybody said, well, I'm expecting this. Somebody else you will find will be different. Remember the point I made about talking different languages or seeing things differently. So you establish it, and you can find a way. It sounds very easy for you and I to say it because we've done it, but it is very straightforward. It's just set the agenda with your client before the meeting. Somebody's going to be responsible, the marketing director or someone. Set the agenda with them and repeat it at the beginning of the meeting. So what we're going to It's like the Americans call it the current state and the desired state. What is the desired state at the end of that meeting? What is everybody expected to go away and do or take action on?
Sure. And what about, because I guess with some people where you've got a long-standing relationship, and if you're going into this pitch meeting, pitch process, make a presentation, let's say now we've clarified the brief and that's all clear, we got it, we've listened to Peter's words of wisdom, we're clear on it, and in terms of the desired and current state, we got that. One of the challenges now is often people like to buy teams. They like to feel the confidence where they're buying, a collective set of experiences. But often people don't come across that well as teams. So again, what can we do in that situation to make sure that we come across as a team? And it might be that we've known each other for a long time, but still don't come across well as a team. But again, any sort of advice here on what we can do?
Yes, it's for those of you across the world that watch your version of Strictly Come Dancing or whatever. It's rehearse, understand, rehearse. What's required of you, rehearse, and stick to it. Yeah. It's what is the desired outcome? What do you want? And work towards it. But you can't go, oh yeah, I know what it is, and walk away and not think about it. It is dedication. It's being committed. And in fact, what comes in there is integrity. Yeah. It's being sure that you have the right team to talk to each of the members of the team, that they are right, they are comfortable, and they can actually voice it with you prior to the pitch, of course, things that they're concerned about. And understand, so when you go in as a team.
Yeah. And then how about, so as you're in as a team, what about building rapport? Because one of the things often is that you don't have much time to build that rapport. It might be that you've got a long-standing relationship with the people that you're pitching to or getting your messages across to. But what about in a situation where that's not the case, where it's more of a cold relationship? Is there any sort of advice that you've got from some of the things you've been through of, how do you build rapport quickly in a world where, you may not have that much time? You may literally have 30, 60 seconds in the lift together with someone before you get into that situation.
Yeah. Okay. There's several things, because you gave me notice of this question, I thought it through. There are several areas of building rapport with, especially with the client. One of them where we often make mistakes is the client comes to the door, comes to the reception, and we send a junior, a PA, to go and collect them from reception and bring them to the meeting room. No, you go to welcome them. That makes them important because it's you coming to welcome them and bring them up. It's also a good time. Psychologically, it's a good time to listen to their expectations, going back to our earlier point. Mm-hmm. It's easier in the lift to say, so what are your expectations of today? And get an easy answer than actually to ask it across the meeting table. Yeah. Rapport means a common point of view. That's it. So it is... your team had been well rehearsed, talked it through, become comfortable with each other, overcome any problems, not to tumble over each other if somebody asks a question. What I have seen in a meeting room is somebody asks a question and the three pitching people all put their heads down and write the answer. And it's like one of those, cocktail things, the bird. It's quite amusing to see it. So it is using a technique of TV news is ask the same question three different ways, and you will get of the people concerned. So you start to build rapport in that way, asking their expectation from the room, and charm, not BS, charm. Be nice, be happy. Hopefully you and I are showing the world that we're happy and we can work together and we actually support each other. Yeah. Because I'm saying words here, you're saying words that aren't written down, aren't rehearsed, but we're having this conversation on behalf of the audience who are here to hear us and see us.
I think having been on sort of both sides of the fence in my sort of position, it's an interesting one, because often you want to feel and this is maybe a personal desire, I don't know, maybe not everyone feels this way, but I'd like to feel that the person who is trying to either convince me of something or sell me something genuinely wants to connect with me. And I know that might be a sort of false reality, because ultimately their goal is to sell me something. But it feels a lot nicer, certainly, if we're going to play a game where I feel like they've got a genuine interest in what my business is, what I'm trying to achieve, what my goals might be, taking some time to really understand that. I think nothing makes me feel more willing to work with someone as a in a sort of buyer-supplier relationship than if I don't feel that. It's, for me, it's one of those personal value drivers that makes me say, forget it. I'm totally not interested. And I don't know how much that matters to other people, but I certainly think this is probably quite important for many people.
I think it matters to 99.9 recurring, really.
Yeah.
There are those that can voice that, verbalize it. There are those that don't realize that that's what's going on in their mind.
Yeah.
So what am I saying is it's being authentic. It is being open and honest. It is, let me make the point simple. It's actually saying to that person what I said earlier in this. What do you want to get out of this meeting? And equally be able to say, look, you are an amazing client. We would, and not necessarily these words, we like what you do. We understand where you're going. There is a match between you and us. And hopefully we can bring this meeting to a conclusion where we both agree.
Yeah.
And we can move forward. I'm using words that sound like a script because it's words that are in a discussion.
Yeah.
But it's up to you to feel comfortable enough to have a conversation, not a heavy pitch.
Sure. And then what about the sort of the danger side of the building rapport, which is, some people call it the friend zone. You can get friend zoned if you're liking it back to the days when, well, you and I are getting on, Peter, but liking it back to the days when you're dating someone, you don't want to get into the friend zone. You don't want to be the date mate, so, how do you avoid getting too friendly that you get friend zoned? And it's quite difficult then to get into a more sort of commercial relationship. Is that a danger of too much rapport?
Answered yes. It's both, because let me jump to my time with Saatchi and Saatchi, which was a great experience. It was like going to a university for communication. It was amazing. And we had to present to the board when both Charles and Michael were there, the Saatchi brothers. And I'll pick up your point. There's one of the guys that I was presenting with, internal meeting, said basically, we are arrogant because we've done work. We're very proud of the work. And we actually present it to our clients saying, hello, aren't we wonderful? These are all the wonderful things we've done for everybody else. Now, will you take us on? And the answer is no, you're too arrogant. So consequently, what we said is we should hold that as information for the client. But the first conversation is a discussion that says, what do you want? Where are you going? What would you like? What's happening with the company? What direction are they coming? And what's important? Having answered those, established those, then we can come back with words and deeds that match where they want to go. In fact, also where the problems are. And I call that the paracetamol moment. It's actually saying, yeah, but what's hurting? It may be competition. It may be unions. It may be what we've been through over the last couple of years, the effects of COVID in different companies, different organizations. Yeah. That's, if you can help take the pain away, then you're going to be of more use to a client and to their team.
And I guess for those of you who are either, I don't know where we're all at on our various career journeys, if you're new to the career of maybe being more senior in an organization, or you're new to the world of work, perhaps. And I think one of the things to notice, and again, to benefit from Peter's experience, a lot of the questions he's asking are very open questions. They're causing, if this was a conversation, to get the other party to want to volunteer up information and share stuff. And it makes me think of empathy, Peter, because I guess in the, one of the numerous studies out there, when we look at what's the behavioral trait of a 21st century leader, let's just look at leadership for a minute. I think everyone seems to agree that empathy, certainly in the world we're in a knowledge work world, is probably the most important characteristic or trait of a great modern leader. Yes. And I think what you're describing in the questions is an empathic approach to questioning, to wanting to get the very best for the other party. And I just wondered if that chimes with you.
Yes. I was reminded just then of I thought you were going in a slightly different direction, but one of those worst moments ever. And that was at a conference where we were presenting and then appearing on a panel. And the chap that was emceeing, that was running the whole thing, said to me, showed me a card and went through and said, so this is you, isn't it? You've done this, you've done this, you've done this. And I said, yes, approved. He went to the microphone and said, I'd like to introduce Peter Penny. He's an oddball. Walked off. Exactly. So people are going, what? And people start, I'm talking about 200 people that we were presenting to. But I just took it, laughed, and just said to the audience, I'm really, really pleased he introduced me like that, because being introduced as an oddball gives you license to do and say anything you want. But the main thing, the serious thing, was I got sympathy, which sometimes I wasn't expecting. I wasn't asking for it, but it's dealing with the issues as they come up.
Yeah. And this is a great link, Peter, talking about oddballs. It's Prime Minister's questions today.
Oh, right.
Anyway, we'll leave that one there. This is a perfect link to politics, you see, because one of the things that we also talked about was, when you're presented with a group of people that maybe you may have not known them, or you may actually know them, doesn't really matter. One of the things that we often talked about is there's like layers to information, aren't there? Now, there's what we might see on the sort of presentation layer, and then there's going to be another layer of the interrelationships between those individuals that we're talking to. So it might be that there are internal politics at play that we really don't know about. So I think this is another important layer to understand in the pitching process, which is what's the team dynamics, what's the politics at play here. And again, I just wonder whether, again, some of the things you've experienced and seen, how important is it to try and take note of these things?
It's very important. And I think it's a very good point to make. It is being overcoming your own fear. And equally, don't undermine your own greatness, is to say to a client that you know, or a body of people that you know with whom you're about to converse, is what do I need to know? This is the simplest way of doing it. Is what are the politics? You can ask that, because there will be those that are for and those that are against. So that's the new meeting, the meeting of new people, one-to-one. Yeah. But show them you're keen. That's the point. They need to see that you are knowledgeable and keen. But equally, if you've known this client for the last 10 years and you've worked with them for the last 10 years, you need to ask them what's the political situation. You may know the political situation. And thirdly is be confident to control the meeting and not to let the horse bolt. Yeah. Because you may get a situation, I'll use an example, this is the financial side. You can get a situation where there's an impasse That happened to me with a client that I knew very well, that we'd worked with over a number of years. We'd got to a point where we couldn't go any further. We'd agreed all of the creative. We were now doing the finance and the budget. And we had the situation that the leader of the pack, of their pack, the CEO, European CEO, had got to a point where he could not lose. I don't mean he could not lose, he could only win. I'm talking about emotionally. We couldn't allow him to lose and us win. And it came to me, and I was very fortunate the brain was working that day. And I just said exactly that. I said, look, I'm a Scot, you're a Dutchman, we're never going to go to an agreement. How about we meet halfway, and later I will buy you a beer, and here's the important bit, I'll pay for it.
Isn't that like Norfolk? I was just thinking, it's like Norfolk, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. It is. Okay, that's a humorous but real example. Yeah. It's a matter of, if you get to the point, your management, you've got the experience. If you've read and got into the art and the science of communicating in pitches and presentations, then you'll understand it. Find a route to move forward. Always find a route to move forward.
And how about
that help? I mean, that was a bit of a waffle, but
no, perfectly. And it sort of raises another question, which is then how do you push
which
back?
Is what we had to do.
Which is exactly what we had to do. How do you push back where you have a situation where, again, it might be something that the client's describing that they think, and I've experienced this a number of times actually, where you've got their description of what the problem is, which is the right problem, but their proposed solutions or what they might require your help in isn't actually the right place. So, how do you push back and respectfully disagree? Because, you can feel and I certainly felt this earlier on in my career, I think, that you can feel incumbent to say yes to things where you in your heart of hearts, you're thinking that's really not going to work. This is not the right approach. But you, again, with experience, you learn how to, I guess, push back. But, do you think being able to push back is important? And again, are there any sort of techniques for those who are new to this that this may help them?
Diplomacy. And to a degree, quick-wittedness. But if you have put forward concept A, and you've put all your push behind concept A, and the important client, the client generally, they're all important, but let's say it's one of the leaders, put forward their thought, then you address it as, okay, we've got two possible routes here, the one that we presented, the one that you're considering. Where are the points of agreement? How can we bring this together?
Yeah,
I'm not saying we're right and you're wrong. I'm not saying you're right and we're wrong. I'm saying there are two ideas. We should now discuss that.
Yeah.
Should they merge? Should they meld? Just be flexible, but be honourable.
Sure. And I guess then to link to, we call it the F word, not the swear word, of course, but we talk about feeling as an important outcome. One of my colleagues, actually, Mark Gray, talks a lot about how do you want people to feel. That could be related to a presentation you make. It could be related to having a one-to-one with someone. But I think this is an important question to think about, of on the receiving end, how do you want those individuals to feel when, perhaps you've left the room? And I just wonder, again, is that something that you would plan out before going into this type of conversation or into a pitch moment of how you want people to feel?
I think let me start with, you're a football guy. You don't go on the pitch. You don't expect your team to go on the pitch with only half a plan. You expect them to go on the pitch to know, what if this happens, how do we overcome it? So that's part and parcel of bring it back out of the analogy and bring it into practicality, is who is there? What are they like? What are we dealing with? What is the problem? It's getting into the depths of every piece of information that you can, so that you can understand what's going on in the room and in the negotiation. um, that feeling bit is overcome by you understanding people, and that you need to do a little bit of studying. And there is what you said, the feely touchy thing. People, and this is in lexicon, this is in words, this is in as well as deeds. Some people are audio people. Some people are tactical people. Some people are visual people. And so your argument should actually take all of those into being. Yeah. And it's in books like The Art of Negotiation. Can I give you a quick story on this? Because there was something, I was doing some research for Ford Motor Company in the US, looking through, we were making a documentary, looking through, discovered a film actually made probably in the 50s or 60s, but quite intriguing to watch. Basically, it's selling a car to a customer. The customer comes in, you can't just say, get on the car, take it for a drive. It doesn't work. But you need to get to know much as you've just said. And they're very cleverly, you open the driver door and walk away from it. So you take your client with the family, if it's that, or the one, and as you walk around the car, they say, you ask them how they feel about the car. How do they see themselves in the car? Listen to the engine, listen to the stereo system that's in there. So they're using the motivational words to find out what that person is like. So by the time they've walked 360 degrees around the car door is open, they're ready, they're friendly to actually step in and take the big new toy for a ride and enjoy themselves. That's very flamboyant and very American, but actually it makes a lot of sense.
Makes a lot of sense, yeah, because you're you're being mindful of the fact that people learn and receive information in very different ways.
Yes.
And to your earlier point, if you're going to be truly empathic in the pitch process, then you've got to be able to touch upon all of those elements.
All of those people could be
to stand a chance. Yeah, exactly. And even within the individual, to make sure that their preferences are met.
Yes. And it goes to the mother-daughter duo that are Myers-Briggs, or were Myers. They are still Myers-Briggs. But they were looking into this issue. How do we get the right people for the right job?
Yeah.
And hence the Myers-Briggs thing came about. But it is very much, this is what I say, learn your craft. Is, people talk about introvert, extrovert. As soon as you talk about Myers-Briggs, they go extrovert, introvert. There's also amnivert, which is the middle way point. But we slightly get that wrong, because we say, well, the people that are amazing for presenting must be extroverts because they're outspoken, they're waving their arms about like I am at the moment, and they're good. But they're only good when they're with other people.
Yeah,
extroverts on their own, I'm over exaggerating here, forgive me, but isn't as productive as an introvert, because an introvert doesn't need anybody. He or she takes the information, takes the door, okay, this is what's expected of me, goes to their desk, gets on with it. And an amnivert is somewhere in between. So it's knowing those people. It's knowing it's asking the creatives what they think of it, the colors, the thoughts, the ideas. Mm. Whereas, and this comes to a very important point, can I jump in, is pitching the finance, which is usually the introvert, not always, is usually the more introvert end of the business. Pitch the budget within as much enthusiasm as you do the creative idea. If they feel you really have control of the budget, their responsibility, where it's going to be spent, how it's going to be spent, how it's going to be reported, how can we check up that it's all going well, how often are you going to report back to us in the duration of this project, da. And so they are going to be happy with you. You can get them happy with you and the creators happy with you, then you're starting to win the pitch.
So
that makes sense? Is that?
Yeah. That's perfect. I'm just going to ask you. So we've gone all the way from the initial sort of defining the brief with someone to make sure that this is all really clear to the end point now where we've got into budget conversations. Things are looking up, like we're having the right type of conversations. We've demonstrated empathy. We've really thought about how they've received information in the right way, got our points across, and so on. We've just left, we've shaken hands or maybe elbow bumped or virtually elbow bumped in our new world. Now what happens next? Because I think this is one of the things we hear a lot of, there's that old adage in sales, speed kills deals, right? So it's one of the, what are the next steps? We've just left each other. We've had that conversation. What do I now do? What's the best sort of course of follow-up you'd recommend?
What have you just done? What
summarized.
Yes, and asked me that question.
Yeah.
And if I turn that, let's say 180 degrees, and point that to your contact in the client, is saying, okay, we've finished the meeting. It all seems to have gone extremely well. I don't want to badger you, but what's the next move? Do you want me to wait for you to call me, or you? It depends on how you can talk with the person, but quite bluntly, ask the question: how do we go forward next? What's the next move? What do you see as the next? Put it to them. What do you see as the next thing to do?
Yeah.
Identify it. Shall we come to you? Should you come to us? Should we wait? How do we move forward?
Which is, this is a really important question, such a simple question, but such an important one to ask, because how many times this could be like some formal pitch process, or it could even be as simple as I've had a one-to-one with someone. And at the end, you can leave that conversation feeling really confused about what the outcome actually was. Speak to someone for a couple of hours and be confused about what the next step is. And I think in a sales process, obviously, that's probably the last thing you want. The worst thing you want is ambiguity about what happens next. I think it's a really good point. And the solution is ask and clarify if you need clarification on it. I think it's a great point. And then final question really is around
ask them the question again. If you keep doing those open questions, so what would you like to happen next?
Yeah.
It's there. It's what information they will give you. If they ask you, then you'd go, well, on a positive conclusion, I'd like to meet for a coffee, talk things through, what you like, what you would like to change. Be prepared with an option that sounds. You don't like the blue one. How about the red one? You
just ruined my last question. That was going to be my last question. Actually, about what is sort of is how was it for you, baby? What's the evaluation afterwards? And I think this is again another important sort of final step not final step, but a concluding step in this process of how do you then evaluate what was maybe thought about your products or services. We work with one organization at the moment actually who have a win rate, they've told us, of around 30%. The interesting thing about it is that they really should be winning about 100%, because what they've got to offer is very unique. They've got a track record of success, and it doesn't make sense that they're losing 60 to 70% of the pitches that they're going in for and the funding that they're applying for. And we were looking at that, and one of the key things is that they're really lousy in the setup. So the people who are going in to have these conversations are very poorly prepared. Even though they're experts at what they do, they're very poorly prepared from what we've been discussing for the last 45 minutes around the sales process and pitching process. And then they're absolutely terrible in evaluation. So they do no follow-up with people. They sort of go in, they do their thing, and then they get surprised when they've won or lost something, really. So I think that their evaluation at the back end is lousy. It's one of the things we were discussing. So again, I just maybe you could talk to that, Peter, about how to then follow up after.
Yes, and I'd like to add in there is following up even with the loss.
Yes.
And let me start there and go back. A lot of people go into mourning. And I don't mean that with any disrespect. but they go, oh no, and they drop and they forget about the client. The client or one or two members in there may also feel negative and down because they liked us, but the boss wanted the other team. So what am I saying? Don't just let it go. And even if they've won, don't just let it go. The point is, almost like we just said, what would you like to do next?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be cared for. And so I would suggest that we start approaching either as individuals, and probably individual first, is, okay, we did get it or we didn't get it, but the next thing I'd like to do is actually discuss it. How did it all come across? What did you think of our ideas? What did you think about pitching? What did you think of our company? Whatever is of interest to the person with whom you're having the conversation. Put simply, if we're talking to the finance team, you want to talk about the budget and then the creative. If we're talking to the creative team, we're talking to the creative, then the finance. It is that, it's always an odd one for all of my career, and you must feel the same. It's blah, 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 blah. We like to do one of these. You go, amazing, great. What's the budget? And they say, oh, we've never done it before, so we don't know. And I'm saying this jokingly, but there's an element of serious. You say to people, what sort of budget do you think it should be? Oh, I don't know. What sort of budget do you think? And so I say, 30 grand, 100,000 pounds. And they go, oh my God, I didn't expect it to be. I said, so you did have a price in mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's negotiate.
Start with $1 million. It's the easiest place to start.
Whatever, but make it enjoyable.
Yeah.
Don't make it too serious.
I think in those situations where
to actually have a relationship with you, Mr. Madam Client, can we please discuss it? Yeah. You will get turned down. They will say, no, don't want to see you ever again. And we have to take that on the chin.
Yeah. And I think in the world where you've been and are, where you're essentially getting across concepts of something that people are going to buy into, it's not an already made thing. This is something that we're going to make together. I think from my experience as well, where I truly feel like I'm rooted in understanding and connected to that individual, yes, and I feel like we are truly on a journey of discovery to solve a genuine problem you've got. If I'm into that space in conversation with someone, it's largely that the money doesn't seem to be that much of a problem, which sounds like a bit of an oxymoron maybe to those who are new to this whole process. But in a way, because what you're describing as well, Peter, is you're in a space when you're truly empathic, that this is a non-commoditized sell. And if I'm selling a pen and you know that the market rate for this is £1 and you're never going to pay more than £1 for it, then forget it. But we're not in that space. In the world of knowledge work, often you're selling a concept and an idea.
Yes.
And the degree to which you're connected to that individual largely will determine their desire to want to invest the required amount of money to make that thing work. Yeah. So again, I think as a nice maybe conclusion to everything that you've been talking about, I think the empathy, the feeling, all of the things that might sound soft and not sales-like are probably the hardest sales-edged things you can perfect with your skill set that will equip you to be able to, as we described at the beginning, to be able to pitch, sell, and essentially be seen in the way that you want to be seen, which is to be heard in the way that you probably want to be heard.
Yes.
So I'm just conscious of time. So we've probably got about 10 minutes left. And just before we conclude, are there any questions, any thoughts? I'm conscious we've covered quite a lot of ground here. So any questions or thoughts from any of you, please use the chat function. Rose.
So we do have a couple of questions. So hello, Peter.
Hello.
We have one question, which is, what would you say of timid sales conversations versus being polite?
Timid
sales conversations versus being polite. Not sure whether they mean hard sales conversations, but it came through as timid conversations.
Timid, no, I think I get that. I like it. It's one of those that you say, good question, because you're going, oh my God, how to answer that? It's how you present it. whatever you've got to say, how do you want to present it? I would say, again, be open and honest, that you can go, oh, well, on a personal basis, what do you think of what's happening with your company? What do you think about where it's going? What do you think about? So again, an open question, and it's easy. And you're obviously talking about them, and that's one of the lift conversations. Going out with the client. That's why it's important. You, not an assistant, goes to the front door with the client. On the sales side is being open and honest, and say, bit of a sales question, da-da. And they respect you because you've told them. It's not you trying to get a piece of information by going, oh, that's nice. Why don't you have you ever thought about it's because that's like a sneaky approach. So the more open, honest, business-like person you can be, the people are friendlier, easier to talk to. And finally, quickly, this comes from psychology, is when you're talking with people, we call it the door handle moment. It's the people who come in to talk to you. They talk to you for 20 minutes, but the point they want to make is made on the door handle as they leave.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Peter. And then one last question for you is, what would you say are the traits of a good pitcher? So how would you identify who might be good to assist you with pitching within your team? So any kind of traits that you think within the team?
Yes, the calmest. Calm, confident, able, that it is the person that can stop the horse bolting, can gauge the room like a good actor, comedian, whatever. You can gauge the room, what's going on, and just stay bright and connected with integrity through the whole meeting.
Yeah, and I think it probably relates back to the knowing your people, the introvert, the extrovert.
Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic, lovely. Well, there we go.
Sorry, can I just add?
Yeah.
It's or the person with that specific knowledge, especially when you're into pharmaceutical or whatever, or engineering. It's the person that really understands what can and cannot be done. Yeah. Because you may be talking to an engineer, for example.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, one of the things I was going to, I'm sure you won't mind, Peter, but I think everyone who's connected and registered for the session today will share your details with everyone. Peter and his colleagues do some brilliant work, as you've probably picked up in this field. And I think whether you're looking at improving sort of personal performance, team-based performance, or organizational, and this is a shameless plug, but Peter and his colleagues can do some brilliant work in working with you in these areas. So we'll connect you to Peter more formally, so you've got Peter's details. And please do stay connected with us. Of course, next month we've got a really interesting session where we're going to be looking at some of the developments in the rail sector specifically. So please tune in for that. And just as a massive thank you, Peter, thank you very, very much for your time, insights, wisdom, and hopefully as people connect with you, your ongoing guidance too. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I just hope that everything that we've put forward in some shape or form is of use, that people got something they can take away and go, oh yes, I'll put that into practice. If they can go do that, I'm pleased.
You can have a lot of pleased people, so you're going to be very pleased. This is a karmic pleasing.
Karmic pleasing, absolutely.
That's awesome. Thank you very, very much, Peter. And again, a huge thank you to everyone who's dialed in wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you. And thank you very, very much, Rose Leach. See you guys soon.
Absolutely. Namaste.